If you've ever soloed a musk ox in game, you definitely know Roland's name, that legendary moment he squared off against a 900-pound musk ox with a knife. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. Because of that, Roland was crowned the strongest war god. But after a one-on-one musk ox kill, this war god shouted Dangi, who is the land god of Alone Season 6, Jordan. With a single arrow, he brought down a 900-pound moose, and that shot made Jordan a legend. He also landed a giant pike worth $500,000. As a top-tier warrior, Jordan doesn't need to say much to show how strong he is. Next, I'll use about 40 minutes and a long breakdown to walk you through in detail how Jordan managed to win this brutal Arctic survival challenge.
My name is Jordan.
The first time Jordan shows up, it's already day 6 and his shelter's done. But the original show never actually showed how he built it. To make up for that missing footage, we might as well invite Jordan back to his old site and have him rebuild this champion hut for us. The main reason Jordan chose this spot is that it's right by water. You need water every day, so how far you are from it pretty much locks in your daily energy fixed cost. It's like your rent and car payment. Those bills don't budge. Hunting, by contrast, usually means trekking a couple kilometers out, which is why dragging that moose back to camp took Jordan so long. Roland's musk ox kill site was 4 kilometers from his shelter, a full half again as far as Jordan's. By day 6, Jordan had already finished his permanent shelter. It wasn't some epic showpiece build, but that ties directly into his survival plan. Early on, he wasn't picky about the shelter, so he just grabbed a small flat spot and just slapped together a simple shelter so he could pour more time into hunting.
开季前，乔丹已摸清其他选手底细。
And out of the 10, he had the least body fat. So banking on starving and burning fat to win was basically off the table. So the faster he finished his permanent shelter, the more it would work in his favor.
I'm the thinnest guy here. I'm not gonna win a starving contest.
Compared with Roland's rock-laden, ultimate wilderness machine for processing food, Jordan preferred to win with brains and strategy. Both of them performed brilliantly, each making different choices based on their own situation. If we really have to compare them directly,
真要比的话，罗兰走猛男路线，乔丹走质量路线。画面再切回乔丹重建冠军小屋。
the logs on the ground are those dismantled before he left. Those logs are the champion's legacy, so no one moved them. Back then, the shelter was packed with clay and moss, but this rebuild is done more loosely. Jordan lays a frame marking the shelter's footprint, then stacks the logs upward. He uses moss to secure the posts. While building the shelter, he has to reserve a spot for the fireplace and already hold a rough image of the fireplace in his mind. Put plainly, before you start building, you should already picture the shelter's shape in your mind. He carves out a pit in the shelter's corner, then stacks stones to form the fireplace base. Clay is used to seal the fireplace, so flames don't slip through stone gaps and set the shelter on fire. This inevitably brings up Amos's shelter accident, which has been turned into an official cautionary example. The tarp each contestant brings is limited. Jordan props up sticks to measure how much tarp he needs, then cuts off the excess, and the cut-off pieces can be used as bags. Jordan actually used the tarp to carry clay. He packed clay between every stone as an adhesive. This sealed the gaps to stop stray flames and also made the fireplace sturdier. In an alone-style wilderness challenge, a fireplace inside your shelter is key to surviving the winter cold. In the freezing Arctic wilderness, snow is pouring down, while inside it's as warm as spring. You're eating roast meat and watching the snow. It doesn't get more high-class wilderness living than that. After the stone fireplace was built, Jordan lit a fire to test the smoke venting, and the tall chimney improved the draft. Smoke from the fire was pulled cleanly out through the chimney, and the flames roared hotter, showing the fireplace was a success, and he could move on to finishing the shelter. Jordan's shelter is an A-frame design. He lines up 2 poles, then ties them together with paracord. He has to melt the paracord ends with a flame so they don't fray and give out. An A-frame shelter needs 2 main frames, with a ridgepole laid across the middle as support. Building a shelter takes a lot of wood. Jordan had already cut a pile of logs nearby. Each log has to be trimmed to match the height of the shelter. Too short supports nothing. Too long punches through the tarp. For some background, in the real show, building a shelter like this usually takes about 5 days. But this time, with Jordan back to recreate his champion shelter, the crew helped gather materials to save on construction time. Near the Arctic Circle, spruce trees grow in uniform sizes, perfect for shelter building. How you fell, trees matters. Done right, you save effort on cuts. Chopping wood is hard physical work, so smart contestants know how to conserve their strength. What if the axe dulls mid-swing? Jordan's got his own multi-tool knife. The built-in sharpener on it can restore the axe's edge. Only now did I realize this multi-tool knife was actually one of Jordan's 10 chosen items. I didn't understand what this multi-tool knife was for until now, when Jordan showed me.
框架搭好后，把多余突出的部分修掉，收拾利索，再铺防水布。
You weigh the bottom edge of the tarp with stones and cut the opening for the fireplace chimney. Any extra resin scraps can be set around the shelter as an extra protective layer. Arctic winters are brutal, so Jordan piled dry grass on the shelter floor for insulation. Once the main shelter was done, Jordan tested the fireplace's draft again, and there were no major issues. If the fireplace leaks smoke, you can just patch the gaps with clay. The tarp used to haul clay shouldn't be wasted. You can hang it at the shelter entrance as a windbreak. In the competition, Jordan covered half the doorway. The other half was sealed by stacked wood. As for the reindeer skull, he put it up only after bagging his first reindeer. What we just watched is how Jordan rebuilt the champion shelter. How accurate is this reconstruction? Back to the competition. Jordan headed out early in the morning to set hunting traps. Along the game trails, he set up a 4-stone deadfall and a snare trap. In the Canadian Arctic, winter temps average minus 26 degrees Celsius, and it can drop to minus 51 degrees Celsius. In such temperatures, 90% of animals go into hibernation. Jordan wants to stockpile food before winter sets in. Otherwise, his odds of winning are tiny, and he's already getting nervous about food. Jordan runs a farm and spends most of his time living in the forest. He once lived for 5 years with local reindeer herders in Siberia, gaining a deep understanding of reindeer behavior. During that time, he learned snow survival skills. Fishing, setting traps, and hunting are routine for him. He soaked up all the reindeer know-how from the herders. Even before the show began, Jordan had told his wife he wanted to call in a reindeer successfully.
Mating season for moose. Hopefully I can call in a moose.
Even with a massive luxury villa to his name, that $500,000 prize is still a huge temptation for him. That's why Jordan joined the competition. He climbed up a hill to scout the hunting terrain.
他抬头一看，正前方就是营地，白绕了一大圈。
And the curved distance was at least 4 or 5 kilometers. Jordan suddenly got really angry. Not because it was too far, but because the area was burned by fire. Forest fires drive away many animals, so with game thinned out, making it through gets way tougher. All 10 drop sites have the basics you need, but each comes with its own trade-offs.
How am I supposed to live here?
Time jumps to day 9. Over these days, Jordan has set up quite a few snares and traps. This is his first haul. It's a day to celebrate. Jordan returns to his shelter with a backpack full of gear.
Big 4-rabbit day.
And 4 rabbits. This first successful haul gives him hope that he can keep going. The 4 rabbits provide about 4,000 to 4,800 calories, enough to cover Jordan's short-term food needs, but rabbit meat is low in fat. In long-term survival, he still has to look for other fat sources, so he gets right to work butchering the rabbits. As he skins one, he spots a bunch of white, milky fluid oozing out inside the rabbit. Noticing, Jordan bent down and lapped it up. Rabbit milk has fat and vitamins supporting immunity and bone health. The rabbit meat can fill his stomach, and the hide can be turned into warm clothing. Once he guts a rabbit, there's only around 2 gin of meat left. I figured Jordan might just go nuts and stuff himself with all that food. His first pot ended up just a plain soup, cooked with 4 rabbit heads and a few organs. He's one of the rare contestants who squeezes value from every catch. I knew Jordan would manage the food side of things very well. Rabbit brains and organs are packed with nutrients such as vitamin B12, folate, protein, and iron. Only by using every detail can you survive longer. Jordan's not the only one eating meat. Linton landed his first big fish on day 6. That fish was a real morale boost. Food keeps contestants going. When he opened the fish's belly and pulled out the swim bladder, it was like being doused with ice water. The swim bladder was full of parasites. If parasites are ingested, they cause stomach pain, diarrhea, and vomiting. The food he caught was infected with parasites. Seeing the fish before him, his appetite vanished as he processed it. As he kept working on the fish, his mood dipped. But Linton had no plans to toss it out. Instead, he cooked the fish and rolled the dice. If it worked, he'd enjoy a meal, and if he lost, he'd tap out in regret. Nathan also landed a fish. A lake trout ended up in his gill net. It was trout spawning season, and eggs pack more nutrition than meat. One adult trout can lay 1,500 to 18,000 grams of eggs. Nathan needed the trout's belly to extract the roe. Fish eggs are naturally fine to eat raw, but they can also carry tapeworms and other parasitic larvae. Eyeing the bag of fresh roe in his hand, Nathan dives right in for a taste. Fish roe is rich in protein and fat. For Nathan, these eggs are delicious, energizing pure food. Nathan guts the fish with a small knife, then slips a few eggs onto a hook as bait, hoping the roe will help him catch more fish back at his shelter. Not long after, he starts feeling unwell and begins to vomit. Wilderness hunting is seriously risky, so don't casually imitate this. In a blink, it's already the 14th night. At dawn, Jordan wakes and talks about what happened. There was a ruckus by his shelter that night, so he stepped out to see what was happening and discovered a moose had appeared nearby. But he didn't overreact, because this moose that walked up to his front door was certainly his target. At first light on day 15, Jordan geared up to track moose. Even with lots of rabbit on hand, its fat is only about half of what you'd get from the same amount of beef. To make it through this freezing winter, he has to take in enough fat to keep out the cold. Moose are loaded with tasty fat, which is exactly why Jordan's been after one from day one. Jordan notices a bunch of fresh tracks on the ground, probably from when the moose wandered near his camp last night. It's now moose mating season, also known as the rut. Bull moose will actually call out to attract females, but not every call you hear is made by a bull moose. It could also be a male Jordan. Reading the tracks, Jordan figures out which way the moose went, and the densest cluster of prints is barely 30 meters from his shelter. He takes this as a great hunting sign and decides to rig up an early warning system. He threads old tin cans on a rope, so if a moose brushes it, they clatter. He can only pray the clatter doesn't spook the moose. The hunt doesn't really turn a corner until 3 p.m. on day 16. Jordan's in his shelter sipping tea. He's not about to just sit around, waiting with a bow for a moose. Instead, he takes initiative, like when fishing. He grabs his bow and a bark megaphone and heads out with his gear. Jordan plans to imitate moose calls to lure one in. The short, guttural calls are made by male moose, while the long calls are by females. Whether he hunts a bull or a cow is up to his preference. He lets out a few basic calls, then sits tight, waiting for a moose. A bit past 5, some crows start cawing, and Jordan takes notice. Crows often send out a lookout to warn other birds of potential danger. Right then, Jordan's can alarm rattles. Bow ready, he crouches and slips outside to check, still in the same unwashed socks and long johns. He scans the area and spots a moose by the water in the distance, about 50 meters away. It could be his one shot at a moose. Jordan instantly draws and fires, but the range might just be too long. The arrow lands right between the moose's legs, and Jordan blows his shot. He says if he got one more shot, he's sure he'd nail it.
If I would have had 2 shots, I would have gotten the moose for sure, but...
Over the next 2 days, Jordan tries his hand at fishing again, but comes up empty. Standing on the shore like a dope with a fishing rod bores him. Hunting is way more fun. He checks his snare traps, but they've all come up blank. Rabbits are scarce here, and once winter hits, catching one will be harder. After a 3-strike streak, missing the moose, striking out at fishing, and coming up empty on his snares, Jordan thought of his father. His father had a leg amputated because of diabetes and later couldn't feel his hands. Even so, he stayed upbeat and inspiring. That sunny attitude had an impact on Jordan. So now, facing these failures and setbacks, he still maintains a cheerful, optimistic mindset. Not every alone champion has taken down a moose or a musk ox, but nearly all champions have that same optimism. Back in his shelter, Jordan reflects on his first failed moose hunt and decides to switch tactics, leaning on lessons learned from reindeer herders. Jordan plans a reindeer-style enclosure to invite moose to stay. You must admit, his idea is genius. If a wanderer with no home, if somebody offers you a free place to live, you move in and stay put. Jordan lives his reputation as the craftiest player in Alone. Previously, he used reindeer calls as a honey trap that did draw in a moose, but the range was too long, so the shot failed. This time, he's running a housing scam, coaxing the moose with free lodging. Roland's hunting style is basically all about brute force heroics, while Jordan is playing a different game. When the reindeer enclosure is finished, all that's left is to wait for some bargain hunting moose to come claim their new home. At 8 a.m. on day 20, Jordan wakes up in his shelter, rolls out, and goes to check his snares. There's nothing in them. But when he looks up and focuses his gaze, he spots a moose ahead of him. The reindeer pen worked. Jordan knocks an arrow and fires.
Holy cow, I nailed it.
From the narration, we know that he successfully hits the moose, and I'm shocked he landed a precise shot from that distance. It's about the distance of Roland's muskox hunt. Jordan heads the way the moose ran and quickly spots a big pool of blood on the ground. The blood is full of bubbles, which means the animal's lungs were probably hit. Jordan follows the blood on the ground to look for the moose, but the hoof prints it left behind are faint. For a moment, he loses the trail and has to rely on his years of hunting experience, reading the grass for clues to his next move. Soon, Jordan spots the moose nearby. The moose is down. With a lung wound, its fate is sealed. All that's left is to wait for it to bleed out, but that usually takes more than 6 hours before it finally dies. Jordan thought about going in for the kill, but remembered rutting season moose are extraterritorial and aggressive. He worries moving in could send the moose running or get him killed. For safety's sake, Jordan can only keep waiting. When it comes to hunting big game, Roland charged a 900 gin musk ox with only a small knife, showing extreme hunting skill and nerve, while Jordan took a cautious approach. Cautious, wait-and-see approach. Maybe that's why Roland is called True God, while Jordan's just the moose god. 3 hours later, the moose suddenly stood up, maybe sensing that Jordan was nearby. Its frame gave a final shudder, then went down with a thump, marking Jordan's kill. Jordan edges toward the downed moose, nerves tight and awestruck as he takes in the massive animal.
Yeah!
After 20 brutal days of grinding it out, Jordan finally cashed in on his relentless grit. You look better than dudes watching this fresh out of the shower. When the thrill dies down, the real task is keeping that venison from going bad. Jordan starts by gutting the moose, since bacteria grow in the organs 3 to 5 times faster than in the meat. This also quickly lowers the animal's overall temperature, slowing down bacterial growth. It buys him time for the later processing and storage of the meat. A single moose weighs between 850 and 900 pounds, yields a large haul of meat, and its hide is a prized resource. The Evenki of Siberia usually depend on reindeer hides for warm clothing to survive the brutal Arctic winters. Confronted with a giant animal like this, even an experienced hunter, even with proper gear, typically spends over 2 hours breaking down one moose. Jordan first removes one of the moose's hind legs. The femoral artery in the thigh carries oxygen-rich blood down to the leg and pelvic area. Slicing those arteries lets the meat cool fast, and he also has to gut the moose right away, which helps keep bacteria from multiplying on the meat. But as Jordan brings his knife down, he accidentally cuts into the moose's stomach, and a rush of blood and stomach fluid bursts out. Puncturing the stomach can release intestinal bacteria that will ruin any meat they touch. A slip-up this basic was a first for him, and it might cost Jordan a lot of meat. This forces him to process all the meat as quickly as possible. He starts by taking off the moose's head, a solid stash of food for when winter really hits. Jordan's frantic butchering marathon drags on deep into the night, and though he knows critters get bolder after dark, and carving up a moose in darkness is risky, he's more unwilling to give up rare protein and keeps working until 10 at night before he finally moved all the meat away. On day 21, Jordan hung all the meat up in the trees. He also built an elevated platform for storing food, shaving the wooden supports smooth to stop mice from climbing up to raid his meat. Before he got the moose, he felt every animal was cute and delicious. But now, Jordan sees animals as thieves. Jordan's double standard is clear. Now his biggest fear is a black bear appearing, since black bears can smell meat from 20 miles away. If Jordan had built a food shelter like Roland's, I don't think he'd be stuck with this kind of hassle. It's still not full winter yet, and with temps still this high, if he doesn't preserve it, Jordan's meat could spoil in less than 5 days. So he plans to turn his entire shelter into a smokehouse, and smoking the meat may take about 24 hours to reach the best result. After a few hours, the venison firms up in the heat of the fireplace, and the smoking dries out the meat and leaves a slightly acidic film on it, making it hard for bacteria to grow. This is another race against time. Apart from the smoked meat in the shelter, the unprocessed meat on the rack also needs protecting. Jordan covers the surface of the meat with pine branches, mainly to keep animals from stealing it. After returning to the shelter, Jordan immediately starts working on an alarm system to protect this hard-won venison, really racking his brains over it. On day 23, the entire wilderness is blanketed with a layer of snow overnight. For Jordan, this is a good thing. Outside, snow pours. Inside, by the fire grilling meat. That feeling is the most satisfying. When a piece of medium rare venison is brought to his mouth, that long-lost taste of meat is the best reward for his days of hard work.
Oh man, a nice crispy blackness on the outside.
The aroma of roasted meat fills the shelter. He takes a bite. The meat is tender, with smoky crust and a wild tang. Every chew is a reward for his hard work. Jordan is clearly happy. Vonia, though, finds his own kind of joy. Just as he hits bottom, his hunting finally turns around. Vonia gets his first grouse. Maybe this little grouse can't compare to Jordan's venison in flavor, but for Vonia, its arrival is enough to move him almost to tears.
So grateful to feel the reward.
Barry, meanwhile, hauls up another big trout from his gill net. To him, this fish is a solid meal. A 1.25-pound lake trout has roughly 7 grams of fat. This trout can feed Barry for 2 days, and it feels like the best gift the first winter snowfall has given him. For Barry, this too is a kind of happiness. By this time, Nikki hasn't eaten for 8 straight days. On day 23, he checks his traps and unexpectedly finds a rabbit.
Hair means so much to me right now, you know?
For him, this rabbit is clearly a blizzard lifesaver, and he's practically drooling with joy. The same goes for Vonia. His trap also catches a rabbit. The laughter echoing through the wilderness is proof of his joy. Vonia collects all the rabbit pelts from his hunts, planning to make a scarf to keep warm. Who can say, if a rabbit saw that scarf, would it be scared stiff? But joy isn't only about catching food or eating roast meat. Sometimes it's your shelter nearly burned down, that feeling of losing and regaining. Nicky's shelter catches fire because his fireplace is faulty, and for a moment he's crushed. But he manages to get the fire under control just in time. In that moment, he is also lucky. The burned area isn't large, and with a few quick fixes, he could stay in the game. Right now, Nicky still had a shot at that $500,000. Who can say he wasn't happy? Time flies. It's day 36. Jordan's clutching grilled meat, whining it's too hard to eat. The instant I heard that, my brain shriveled. Listen, does that sound like something a human would say? He's eaten so much meat his teeth hurt, so he whittled a wooden stick and uses it in place of his teeth to chew the meat. In ancient Babylon, people used chewing sticks as a substitute for toothbrushes.
Wow, Mom, this is great!
And for a second, I was genuinely speechless at this clown in front of me. Don't let his cheerful laughter fool you. When he goes to check his meat cache, he spots prints in the snow, and his heart jumps. Tracks scattered everywhere. They look like a little meat thief's prints, and this spot is only about 20 meters from the shelter. Based on the tracks, Jordan figures they were probably left by a wolverine. Wolverines are ruthless hunters. They can even lie in wait under 20 feet of snow, waiting for hibernating prey. Jordan's first thought is to set up an early warning system. When something tries to steal meat, it'll make a noise so he can rush over to drive the thief off. A silent battle to defend his food is about to begin. That night, Jordan stays up to confront the thief. A wolverine appears. Jordan hears footsteps from inside the shelter and quietly watches from the doorway. Back in the shelter, Jordan describes what just happened. He saw a wolverine about to steal his meat, but when it noticed him, it bolted. The process was tense and thrilling. A hungry wolverine will attack competing predators, so Jordan only scared it off and let it go unharmed, just praying it won't sneak back for another theft. Jordan checks his meat stash daily, and when he lifts the pine branches, he realizes the kidney fat's already gone, stolen and eaten. Right away, he's stuck in a bind. He can't finish all the meat quickly, yet he can't stop animals from stealing it. This fat is what he stored back on day 22. A gallon of moose fat contains about 35,000 calories. In winter, if you're not taking in sugar and carbohydrates, what your body burns is fat rather than protein. So this gallon of moose fat is extremely important for Jordan.
Now I really want to kill those wolverines.
He'd rather lose 10 pounds of venison. He can't stand losing fat that could feed a family. Jordan's seething, cursing under his breath, wishing Wolverine good health and a long life. Once he reset the meat rack, Jordan's next step is to strike back at the food thief, laying snare traps all around and rig an alarm. The instant a tin can rattles, he'll snatch up his bow and go after it. That one act of mercy just cost him enough moose fat to feed a whole family. He'd had enough of being the nice guy and vowed that the wolverine thief would pay with its life. He rigged an alarm system in the clearing. This is a battle between Jordan and the wolverine. Who comes out on top? Only time will tell. Tonight, Jordan stays up again, lying in wait for last night's thief to come back. Wolverines hunt at night, usually active between about 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. As time slowly passes, weird sounds drift up outside the shelter. The thief is out again, stealing food. Jordan steps out with his bow to check, then lies in wait silently in the dark for his moment.
Yeah! I just killed a wolverine with a hatchet. Yeah. Woo! Oh my God. Yes!
Jordan's laughter rang out, signaling his hunt had succeeded. Jordan's hunting skills are razor sharp. Once he locks onto a target, that animal is done. He carried a carved bear to his shelter. A carved bear weighs between 20 and 66 pounds, but most of that is pure muscle. In any case, tonight was a happy night. Jordan not only stopped the food thief, he also scored dozens of pounds of meat. Carved bear never saw it coming. The price of stealing fat was its life. Don't steal Jordan's food. By the next morning, that food-thieving carved bear was already hanging from a tree. Its expression looked a bit eerie, but this is what happens when you anger Jordan.
森林里的动物多了，除了雕熊，还有别的 scavenger 来捣乱。
Jordan decided to build a higher platform to store his food. He picked out 3 straight pine trees here and started building a raised platform about 3 meters up. He used his axe to strip the bark from the pines. Removing the bark makes it harder for scavengers to climb, and storing food in midair is actually pretty common. Past contestants have done the same. Lifting the platform keeps thieves off, but it also makes it a lot harder for him to reach his own meat. So Jordan put together a wooden ladder, and with it, moving his stored meat up and down got a lot easier. He placed all the leftover meat on the 3-meter-high platform, hoping this would prevent animals from stealing it. 45 days passed quickly. Today was the contestant's medical checkup day, and the results weren't great. He'd already dropped a lot of weight. Even with hundreds of pounds of meat stored up, moose meat is very low in fat. Less than 1 gram of fat per 100 grams of meat. Keep this up, and Jordan might be grilling meat daily yet still slowly starve in that brutal winter cold. If you're not taking in sugar and carbohydrates, what your body burns is fat, not protein. So even if Jordan eats meat daily, he can still starve. To change this, Jordan turns his attention to the trout in the lake. Fish oil is loaded with omega-3, with 13.5 grams of fat in every tablespoon, which means a trout swimming in the lake is basically a flying ball of lard.
Fish have a sustainable amount of fat in them. These lake trout are pretty oily.
Jordan makes a primitive fishing rod by fixing a reel to a stick with trap wire, a kind of foraging he once scoffed at. But for the sake of fat, he now has to put in the hours on the lake. This homemade primitive rod turns out to work even better than he expected. On the first cast, a fish bites. He reels it toward shore. At that moment,
Oh no!
that chunk of oily meat with a razor mouth wriggles free. The trout spits the hook and swims off with the bait. It also takes Jordan's hook with it. He sits on the bank, a bit at a loss, but there's no way he can keep fishing now. That's life for you. Guts wrapped in life knotted up. That night in his shelter, Jordan laughs at himself. This guy has taken down a moose. He's eating roast meat, but he's on the verge of starving. Brutally real and absurd has actually happened to him. Even with hundreds of pounds of moose meat, he still feels completely cornered. It does look pretty ridiculous from the outside, but that's how life is. Never smooth sailing. Rough patches make it whole. The next morning, Jordan slips on his rabbit fur coat and does a runway show outside. Seeing him, I instantly think of Kelly, the season 7 Alone runner-up, who also made a rabbit fur coat and strutted around in it. In the show, Kelly said he was paying tribute to Dear God Jordan from season 7, so the two of them basically repeat the same move in this scene. All this time, Jordan's been heading out to fish, but every single attempt has failed. He's now just wishing winter would hurry up so he can ice fish on the frozen lake. Before he ever lands a fish, the moose head is Jordan's only source of fat. He uses his knife to scrape off the scalp fat, gathering this subcutaneous layer to render into oil. Moose tongue is one of the most precious and most nutritious parts of the entire animal. It's rich in high-quality protein and healthy fats, which are crucial in an Arctic environment. Moose tongue is especially tender and packed with B vitamins and minerals like iron and zinc that boost your energy and keeps your blood flowing. In sub-zero cold,
在零下几十度的环境里，维持体温就要大量消耗热量，而舌头里的脂肪能量密度极高，是高效的燃料。
making it an efficient heat source. Jordan puts the moose tongue in an iron pot to render the fat, and the whole pot of fat already smells incredible, not to mention how good those crispy bits would taste over rice. Jordan then pours the rendered fat into jars to store. Those crispy leftovers make perfect little snacks, and today's rendered fat should see him through to winter. Jordan only began rendering fat because he couldn't land any fish, while Nathan hauled a 10-kilo monster straight out of his gill net. By turning meat into smoked jerky, he can eat it for 2 weeks. On top of that, his gill net also caught a pike. The biggest pike he's landed so far, 50 centimeters long, practically filling the whole frame. Nathan's now the season's top fish catcher, and if Jordan were here, he'd be drooling non-stop. Barry also hauled in a big, fat trout, and each fish is loaded with the fat Jordan needs, but lacks.
Yeah!
On day 50, before dawn, Jordan is already awake, clearing his throat. He said that by using vibration to clear his throat, it wouldn't feel itchy. Used to being on his own, Jordan always finds little ways to keep himself amused in his solitude. Every day, Jordan checks his meat cache. When he climbs the 3-meter-high platform to inspect the remaining meat, he discovered that all the fat on the meat was gone. Jordan saw many bite marks on the meat, and there was some fur on the tree trunks. Looking around, he found wolverine tracks. The wolverine's long, curved claws help it climb, even on those smooth, bark-stripped trunks. This wolverine kept raiding the moose fat, so Jordan had to launch a new fat defense war. The 3-meter platform was already high enough, but since the wolverine could climb up the smooth trunks, he decided to turn its only route into a killing ground with snare traps. Jordan set snare traps on each tree trunk. As the wolverine climbed up, there was a high chance it would be caught. In addition, there was an alarm system between the trunks. The moment anything brushed those cords, the cans by the shelter would clatter noisily. This is a tightly designed, complex meat storage platform. It was day 51, his daughter's 3rd birthday. At dawn, Jordan sent her a distant happy birthday.
Ilana, happy birthday. Love you a lot. Happy birthday.
Although he misses his child very much now, the emotion Jordan shows is not negative. He doesn't want to waste too much time dwelling on missing his family. Years alone haven't driven him to collapse. Beyond his optimistic attitude, he'll also whip up little gadgets just to entertain himself. He carved some playing cards out of bark, and the stake was his $500,000 prize money. Probably the biggest betting table in Alone's history, where Jordan is both the house and the gambler. On a card table, the rules are clear and the outcome is obvious. But the card game of life is always hazy and hard to read. Destiny never shows you its hand, and it won't reshuffle just because you grind. And it's exactly for that reason that every choice, every decision, every card you play becomes more important. On day 59, with the temperature at minus 14 degrees Celsius and the lake frozen over, Jordan launched an ice fishing plan, but he ended up empty-handed. By day 63, he switched from ice fishing to full-on winter net fishing. He was weaving a gill net. Fishing had never been part of Jordan's survival plan, but the gill net was still a key part of his plan. He was hungry for a big, fatty trout and a real feast. Going long without fat kept his weight dropping. A human should take in 44 to 78 grams of fat a day, but Jordan's daily fat intake was far below normal. This gill net cost him nearly a full day, working outside at minus 14 degrees Celsius. His feet were numb from the cold. Few could endure this. With that much meat already on hand, most contestants would probably just lie flat and coast. Who would push through suffering like this? Jordan spent 2 days to finish that gill net. He also made a pair of shoes for walking on the ice. These wide ice shoes spread out his weight and effectively reduce the chance of breaking through. If you fall into the water while ice fishing, the cold water will strip away your body heat in no time, increasing the risk of hypothermia. If you go ice fishing in the wild, either do it like Roland, carrying a long pole, or like Jordan, with a pair of wide ice shoes. In the Arctic, wind slashes like a blade, and the world is a silent white. The chainsaw like Auger's wine cuts through the hush. Real survival isn't about battling nature. Yet even at rock bottom, he keeps groping forward, knocking on life's door. Out on the ice, Jordan carves 2 holes, one for the king of gold. The other net hole remains idle. Jordan buries the mouths in snow. Trapped air insulates, which sharply cuts down heat exchange with the air, so the holes don't freeze shut. Before he knows, 3 days slip by and the lake ice gets thicker. Jordan hasn't washed his hair in a long time, and his scalp is prickling. With food scarce and meals monotonous, long-term malnutrition has caused him to lose a lot of hair. He's starting to notice his hair thinning out. For $500,000, who cares about losing some hair? Today, Jordan heads out to check his gill net, his body drained by long-term malnutrition. He fears he's dropping weight too fast, and that the med team will pull him from the show. Now he's pinned all his hopes on this gill net. He brushes the snow away from the hole and hauls the net up from the water. Moments later, he's on camera with a trout in his arms. Within a minute out of water, the trout turns rock hard, like an ice sculpture. The breath from Jordan's nose crystallizes on his beard as well. The air is so dry, no moisture remains. Before the trout freezes, he quickly slits it open. Jordan goes straight for the fat on the fish intestines, texture velvety, like ice cream. This trout can sustain fat for 4 days. Not a single part should be wasted. But not everyone is as lucky as Jordan. Harris has also tried winter fishing. He even made ice shoes from branches similar to Jordan's, but came back empty-handed.
This is so hard, man. I just want my wife and kids, man. It hurts. I'm starving. Put the fight in me again. Please. Put the fight in me!
If a single fish can feel like a priceless treasure to Jordan, then one rabbit can mean the same to Vanya. With Halloween days away, he hopes to stash food for a holiday feast. Out checking his traps, he suddenly saw a rabbit come out to forage. But when he lifted the bow, he still missed the rabbit from just 2 meters away. Only then I saw the distance between him and the champion was like an ocean. Even spotting a rabbit was a stroke of luck, but he never imagined the one that slipped away would soon repay him in another form. Vanya's trap successfully caught a rabbit. By now, its fur had turned completely white, a clear sign that winter had fully arrived. They shift their coat color with the surroundings to stay safe.
Oh my God, what a turnaround.
Today, Vanya brought in 2 snowshoe hares, and the joy of success went to his head. He could barely picture how good it'd taste to polish off 2 rabbits in one Halloween meal. On the night of day 70, Jordan, who usually looks ferocious when he sees animals, was unusually gentle and friendly tonight because an uninvited guest had come into his shelter. A stoat in snowy white fur drops by Jordan's place, boldly swiping stuff just by being adorable. Its eyes lock onto a half-eaten rabbit hide. Jordan watches as it bites the skin and trots away. The stoat's tiny food heist gives Jordan a brief laugh. Now it's minus 18 degrees Celsius, colder than Jordan expected. The instant he leaves his shelter, the wind slices into his bones. For Jordan, the 5 years he once spent living with reindeer herders in Siberia are now particularly paying off. Jordan plans to fetch some meat to eat, but in deep cold, Living on pure protein can cause poisoning. Protein poisoning is much like starving. The body's getting plenty of calories, but not enough nutrients. Yet when he reaches the storage platform, the sight before him makes him instantly break down.
I left the ladder up.
Last time Jordan fetched meat and left, he forgot to reset the ladder, giving a thief the opportunity. Seeing the footprints, he thinks it's the same Wolverine raiding again. Luckily, it only swiped fat, so there's still plenty of meat left, but the trout's rich, fatty skin has been stripped clean. Jordan suddenly feels like an idiot, filled with regret and shame over his carelessness. By now, the temperature has dropped to minus 18 degrees Celsius, and Jordan is not the only one regretting his own carelessness. So is Nathan. That night, cooking fish soup, the hearth fire grows too strong. The winter shelter is bone dry inside, and the fire races through the shelter. Nathan rips timbers and slaps sparks, but the more he battles it, the quicker the fire spreads, almost setting him alight, and the blaze is out of control, and Nathan watches helplessly as his shelter burns. He knows the fire is consuming more than just the shelter, his $500,000 going up in smoke. Behind him, the shelter spits sparks, which in the pitch-black Arctic night resemble a dazzling fireworks show.
This really sucks. It's nighttime and they can't fly the helicopter at night, so I've got at least a 7-hour wait. So I am beginning construction of a shelter. Yeah, this should be good. Super sad. God, I lost some precious items in that fire, including a pretty sweet future. 72 days. Burns up in half an hour. It's so cold.
Nathan's journey ends here as he radios the crew to quit the competition. Be it Vanya's shelter or Nathan's, both keep reminding us how crucial shelter safety is. At this point, we can't help but mention Amos from Season 7 of Alone, whose ordeal was nearly the same as Nathan's. They both torched their shelters, lighting up the entire wilderness. I'm sure when you saw their shelters go up in flames, you were just as shocked as I was. Early that morning, Jordan woke up craving chocolate, so he wanted to go get some bone marrow to eat. Once it's been frozen, the frozen marrow feels like chocolate. A wolverine had swiped his fish skin, which pissed him off. After waking, he went back to the lake to check his gill net. Fish is now his only source of fat. Today, he wanted to try ice fishing. He decided to try luring fish with light, shining it into the water to draw in plankton, to lure fish. He brushed snow from the hole and aimed his headlamp at the water, then sprawled on the ice-cold lake, hoping a fish would take the bait. Jordan needs 45 grams of fat a day to hold his weight. After a long wait, the cold drove him back and finally retreated. Jordan's on edge about his weight. He now hopes Wolverine shows up to steal food again, so he might get a chance to hunt it. The fat on a Wolverine, however much or little, could still give Jordan a bit of extra energy. He knows pinning his hopes on ice fishing for food will be brutal, and he's gripped by panic at how fast he's wasting away. Then, a helicopter appears in the sky. Vanya officially taps out.
Hi, everyone. Mixed emotion of like joy and sorrow. My body's done, but I don't really want to leave.
His body had reached its limit, so he decided to tap out. The rabbit skin scarf on his neck already speaks for his skill. Like Kelly, he needs few words. Vanya has survived 73 days, and to me, that's already downright amazing. With Vanya gone, Jordan now officially takes the crown, and before you know it, day 77. At dawn, Jordan goes to the lake to check his net. He finds a giant pike weighing 30 gin. When this fish is hauled from the lake, you'd never imagine it's worth $500,000. In this brutal Arctic survival challenge, this one fish can keep Jordan fed for at least a week. Still basking in the joy of that pike, Jordan had no idea he had already become the champion of this Arctic challenge. Back at his shelter, he whipped up a big pot of fish soup for lunch. He wanted a real feast, because it was medical check day and he feared his weight had fallen. He worried they'd pull him from the game. As he was relishing the fish stew, the medical helicopter appeared again. This time, though, the helicopter wasn't here to take another quitter home as usual, but to bring the victor back.
How are you feeling right now?
Jordan kept trying to convince the production team that he was doing just fine out here.
I feel as good as any day. I feel good.
Kept emphasizing how hard he was working to keep his weight up, hoping this would convince them not to pull him from the game over weight issues, unaware that his wife was quietly walking up behind him.
Oh my God! Oh my goodness!
Seeing his wife, Jordan could hardly believe his eyes, and only then did it hit him that he'd won this Arctic challenge. He let his wife see the fruits of his ordeal, and they held each other in the shelter as she fully felt the hardship and effort her husband had poured into these days. Enduring the Arctic's deep freeze has never been about showing off, but a crucible for resolve. Under cold clouds, Jordan didn't battle nature. He moved with it. Through long days and nights, he learned restraint, to wait, learned to let quiet push out fear. By what he did, Jordan showed that real strength isn't in beating the wild, but to those who can find peace within it. He didn't win by luck, but by calm, practiced skill, and an unbreakable will. All right, that's the end of this season's champion arc. If you enjoy this series, you can like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep sharing more episodes from this series.